My name was Ahmed. I was a Quran teacher, a respected figure in a conservative neighborhood of Saudi Arabia. To the outside world, I embodied discipline, tradition, and unwavering faith. But inside, I grappled with an emptiness that prayer could not fill. The rituals felt like chains, binding me to a belief system that suffocated my soul. I was admired for my piety, yet I yearned for something more, something true. One fateful night, tragedy struck. An accident left me in a coma, suspended, between life and death. In that shadowy void, I encountered Jesus, a luminous figure calling my name. It was an awakening like no other, a revelation that shattered the very fabric of my understanding. He showed me a hidden truth, a spiritual war being waged, where religious facades masked a more profound reality. I was not just faced with my mortality, I was confronted with a reality that exposed the lies I had been fed. When I awoke, everything was different. The faces that once looked to me for guidance now turned away in horror. I was deemed a heretic, the very community I loved rejecting me for a truth I could no longer ignore. Overwhelmed by guilt, fear, and isolation, I sought solace in the pages of the Bible, my heart torn between new revelations and the loss of all that I had known. What I discovered was a profound love and a call to action. Jesus' truth stirred a fire within me, a mission to awaken others trapped in the shadows of deception. I knew this journey would not be easy, but the urgency of my spirit could no longer be silenced. I embraced my new faith, risking everything to break free from a system that had kept me in chains. As I step into this new life, I invite you to listen closely. My testimony will unveil the darkness hiding in plain sight and the light that led me to true freedom. This is a call to anyone who has ever felt that emptiness, that yearning for something deeper. Before we dive into my journey, I want to hear from you. Where are you watching from? And what time is it there? Drop a comment below, let's connect. And if you resonate with this journey of awakening, subscribe to Truth from Beyond. This isn't just a channel, it's a lifeline to the truth, and the revelations that await might just change your life forever. As a respected Quran teacher in my conservative neighborhood, I always felt suffocated by the weight of expectations that surrounded me. Each day, I fulfilled my duties with devotion, reciting verses and imparting teachings to my students. Yet beneath this veil of outward piety, an unsettling emptiness gnawed at my soul. I often pondered the meaning behind my rituals, feeling a disconnection between the fervor of my practice and the true essence of faith. I was caught in a relentless cycle, adhering strictly to the rules while feeling an intense dissatisfaction brewing within me. It was as if I was a shadow in my own life, moving through the motions but never really living or experiencing the truth of my faith. This disquiet deepened as I confronted the reality of my existence. My nights were often restless, filled with haunting dreams that hinted at something more profound, something hidden beneath the surface of my believed truths. I found myself asking difficult questions. Was I simply following an inherited belief system? Were the teachings I held close being used to manipulate me and those around me? I felt a stirring within me, an urge to seek answers outside the confines of what I had always known. Yet the fear of stepping outside my prescribed role kept me shackled, afraid of the repercussions from my community and loved ones. Then came the pivotal moment that irrevocably altered the course of my life. During a particularly strenuous day of teaching, I collapsed. In that instant, my body surrendered to the darkness, and I slipped into a state of consciousness that felt surreal. I found myself in a void, enveloped in silence and stillness, far removed from the noise of my everyday existence. In this emptiness I waited, suspended in time and space. Just as despair began to creep in, a brilliant light pierced through the darkness. I was drawn towards it, feeling an inexplicable warmth wash over me. In that moment, I encountered Jesus, who stood before me with an open invitation to come closer. As I approached, I felt my heart swell with an infusion of love and clarity. Jesus looked into my eyes, and for the first time I felt truly seen. "Ahmed," he said, softly, and it echoed in my very being. In that divine moment, he began to reveal profound truths about my life and the spiritual war that raged around me. I saw images of the hidden agendas of the elite, their efforts to manipulate and control, fostering division among humanity. I witnessed the deceptions that permeated society, the propaganda that stifled awakening and led so many to live in fear and ignorance. The realization struck me like thunder. I had been blinded by the norms that dictated my life, and now I was being given the gift of revelation. The visions continued, showcasing conflicts that arose from ignorance and hatred, the scars of division that plagued our world. I could see how political leaders played on the fears of their followers, disseminating false narratives to maintain power. It felt like an endless cycle of manipulation, a web woven by those in authority to keep the masses in line. Jesus' message was clear. He called me to awaken to the truth and to embrace a new understanding of spirituality that transcended tradition and dogma. I realized that my journey was not simply about my own awakening. It was a call to help others break free from the chains of deception that bound them. As the light began to fade, I felt the pull back to my physical body, leaving me filled with a mix of gratitude and trepidation. I awoke in the sterile confines of the hospital, vibrating with the energy of my encounter. I had been transformed, touched by the divine. Yet I couldn't shake the weight of what lay ahead. I understood there would be struggles, fears to face, and relationships to mend. The stakes seemed high. Would my family accept this new truth? Would they view me as a traitor for embracing a path that diverged from the beliefs they held dear? The journey ahead was filled with uncertainty, but I felt an undeniable urgency to share the truth I had encountered. The fire ignited within me would not be extinguished. It was time to confront the hidden agendas of deception and step boldly into the light of awakening. As I stood in prayer, a familiar sense of doubt began to creep in, disrupting the once peaceful rhythm of my devotion. My heart was heavy with questions that seemed to echo louder each day. I felt the weight of a rigid religious framework pressing down on me, stifling the very spirit I sought to nurture. My thoughts swirled in turmoil as I uttered the words I'd recited countless times. But now they felt hollow, lacking the genuine connection they once held. The teachings I had dedicated my life to began to unravel, replaced by an unsettling sense of disconnection. In those moments of quiet reflection, I couldn't help but wonder if my faith was more of a burden than a blessing. Nights became increasingly restless as my dreams transformed into vivid reflections of my inner yearnings. I found myself in landscapes filled with light and warmth, places that embodied a sense of freedom I had longed for but never fully experienced. Yet alongside these dreams, darker images unfolded. They portrayed a struggle between light and shadow, illustrating the tension of the spiritual war I was unwittingly engaged in. The dreams challenged the very truth I had upheld, urging me to confront the deception that tangled my heart in fear, guilt, and compliance. Each morning, I awoke with a mixture of hope and dread, haunted by the deep questions that lingered in the recesses of my mind. It became increasingly difficult to turn a blind eye to the realities surrounding me. The more I ventured into my dreams, the more I recognized the hidden agenda that seemed to pervade our lives. I began to see how the elite manipulated beliefs, pulling strings to control the masses while masking their true intentions. Every sermon I delivered now felt like a performance scripted by an unseen force, designed to maintain the status quo rather than inspire genuine awakening. This realization sent tremors through my spirit. Could it be that I had been complicit in perpetuating a system that fostered fear and division rather than love and unity? One fateful night, in the midst of an especially vivid dream, I found myself enveloped in a radiant light, and there stood Jesus before me. His presence was unlike anything I had ever encountered, filled with warmth and understanding. He called my name, Ahmed, and I felt an immediate rush of recognition and comfort. In his gaze I could see wisdom and compassion that transcended all worldly understanding. As he spoke, the revelations began to unfold, piercing through the darkness that had clouded my heart for so long. I was shown glimpses of a world where love triumphed over fear, where the truth liberated rather than confined. The experience filled me with urgency as I grasped the depths of the spiritual war that had entwined my life. Jesus revealed to me the layers of deception, peeling them back one by one, exposing the painful realities behind our divisions and conflicts. I saw how manipulation fueled societal strife, how leaders exploited our fears to uphold their power. The truth settled deep within me, igniting a flame of determination to awaken not only myself, but those around me. My heart raced with the knowledge that my life had been touched by the divine, and that the very essence of my existence was now intertwined with the mission of love and truth. I knew that stepping onto this path would not be easy. It came with its own sacrifices and challenges. Yet, I felt an undeniable pull to embrace this calling, ready to confront the unseen forces that sought to keep me and others in chains. After a harrowing accident, I found myself suspended in a dark, desolate desert realm. The air was heavy with silence, an eerie stillness that left me feeling unmoored. I was, by all accounts, in a coma, a state where my body lay in the hospital, yet my spirit was thrust into this otherworldly landscape. I wandered in confusion, grappling with the reality of my situation. It felt as though I was lost in a bad dream, a nightmare where shadows draped around me, embodying the doubts I had carried throughout my life. As I moved through this desolate expanse, my heart raced, aware that something awaited me beyond the veil of darkness. Then, out of the shadows, a brilliant light pierced through, illuminating the barren landscape like a beacon of hope. It was a radiant figure, exuding an aura of warmth and compassion that cut through the despair surrounding me. As I approached, I recognized him, Jesus. In that moment, the air crackled with energy, and I felt a surge of recognition wash over me. He spoke my name, Ahmed, a sound that resonated deep within my soul. It was like coming home after a long journey, a journey filled with discontent and yearning for something more profound than the strict religious framework I had adhered to. Jesus began to unveil the truth about the spiritual war that raged not just in the realms around me, but within the very hearts of people. I felt an overwhelming sense of urgency as he revealed the hidden agendas of those in power, the elite who manipulated faith itself as a tool of control. Instead of fostering genuine connection and spiritual awakening, they used religion to create division and suppress the truth. I was shown glimpses of conflicts around the world, the wars fought not just with weapons, but with words, beliefs, and fervor. The realization struck me. The very principles I had upheld were being exploited as a means to instill fear and compliance rather than love and unity. As each revelation unfolded, I confronted a deep crisis within myself. My concept of faith began to shatter, leaving behind the fragments of what I had been taught. I questioned the very nature of existence, wondering if the teachings I had followed so diligently were part of the deception intended to keep believers in check. The tension within me grew palpable, battling against the belief system I'd invested my life in. I felt a flicker of fear at the thought of leaving it all behind, yet there was also a newfound freedom stirring within me. The light of Jesus illuminated a way forward, beckoning me to embrace the truth that had eluded me for so long. In that moment of spiritual clarity, I understood my call was not merely for personal awakening, but for the awakening of others trapped in similar cycles. I felt compelled to share what I had learned, to shout from the rooftops about the truth I had encountered. It was time for me to rise against the spiritual oppression I had witnessed and guide others toward liberation. I could almost hear the voices of those around me, friends, family, people I loved, still lost in their fears and doubts. The urgency to connect and share this revelation burned within me. I realized that though my journey had been painful, it would give rise to hope for others, igniting a desire for a more profound connection with the divine. As the light began to fade around me, I felt the pull back to my body, a call to action, and a reminder of the mission that awaited me on the other side. Upon awakening, the world I returned to felt like a shadow of the one I had left behind. Instead of joy or relief, I was met with a harsh reality that cut deep. My family gathered around me, but their expressions were anything but welcoming. I could see the disappointment and anger in their eyes as they branded me a heretic for my newfound beliefs. I had always known my role as a cleric, a figure of respect and authority in our community, yet now I stood before them as an outcast. The weight of their judgment pressed down on me, igniting a tumultuous storm of guilt and fear within my soul. Isolation began to wrap its cold fingers around me as I struggled to reconcile my transformative experiences with the perceptions of those I loved most. Memories of our shared faith felt like a distant echo, replaced by the profound truths I had learned from Jesus during that pivotal encounter. I could no longer see the teachings of my youth in the same light. The revelation of the hidden agenda manipulating our beliefs, one designed to keep us in line, continued to haunt my thoughts. I was conflicted, torn between the love for my family and the conviction that I had discovered a deeper, more meaningful truth. Days turned into weeks, and the silence that surrounded me became deafening. I missed the comfort of my past, the sense of belonging that fueled my spirit. I longed to share what I had learned, to help them see the spiritual war that raged not just in my heart, but in the fabric of society. Every time I opened my mouth to speak, I feared rejection would come flooding back. The tension grew thick as I realized how many others were likely suffering in isolation, bound by the same deceptions that had ensnared me. Their confusion mirrored my own, and I felt the urgent need to bridge that gap, even as the cost loomed over me. The dreams that had once been filled with warmth and freedom began to shift in tone. They morphed into vivid reminders of what I had lost and what I stood to lose. Each night brought the same haunting question: could I truly be a messenger of truth, or would I remain shackled to the past? I felt caught in a web of spiritual and social conflict, struggling to make sense of the divine revelations that called me to share my life with the world, while the people I loved most turned their backs. I could almost hear the whispers of doubt creeping in. Was it possible that I was wrong? Had I been deceived, destined to be ridiculed for my choices? Yet, each time doubt crept into my mind, I recalled the love and light that Jesus had shown me. I could see the urgency of my mission in every face that had been touched by fear or manipulated by the elite. I knew I belonged to something far greater than myself, a movement of awakening that sought to liberate us from the chains of deception. With each passing moment, my heart swelled with a growing resolve to confront the challenges ahead. I couldn't turn back now when so many souls were yearning for the truth. My path was clear, even if the journey was fraught with challenges. It was time for me to step into my calling, for myself, and for those still bound by the weight of silence. In secret, I embarked on an uncertain quest for truth, navigating the delicate balance between my past and the awakening that awaited me. Each day, I found myself drawn more deeply into the pages of the Bible. It felt like a lifeline thrown to me in the midst of a raging sea. The words resonated with a clarity that I had never known before, igniting a flame within my heart that began to illuminate the darkness of confusion around me. I spent hours poring over stories of faith, courage, and transformation, wondering if I could ever be as brave as those who had come before me. The characters in those pages felt more real than the world I inhabited, their struggles echoing my own silent battles. The online testimonies I discovered became another source of solace. I listened to people like me, individuals who had challenged their beliefs and emerged on the other side, often transformed by their encounters with Jesus. There was comfort in knowing I wasn't alone in my search for something more meaningful. Each story breathed life into my spirit, connecting me to a broader community that yearned for truth amid oppression. My heart yearned to share my experiences, but the fear of losing my former life loomed large. I was acutely aware of the price of my awakening, the potential ostracism from my family, my friends, my entire way of life. Yet the yearning for authenticity proved too strong to ignore. In my most vulnerable moments, I found myself crying out to Jesus in prayer, pouring out my fears, hopes, and uncertainties. I felt as if I was standing at a precipice, gazing into the depths of my soul. "Help me," I pleaded. "Show me the way." It was in these heartfelt prayers that I felt the gentle push of divine love urging me forward. There was a clarity that emerged, a stillness that settled within my spirit, affirming the quiet resolve to not only seek the truth, but to live it openly. I knew that my journey would take courage, but with each prayer, I felt a little more emboldened to embrace the path that lay ahead. One evening, in the privacy of my cramped apartment, a moment of divine orchestration unfolded. I received an invitation to participate in a clandestine baptism. The significance of this invitation was not lost on me. It represented a profound shift away from the constraints of my past and toward the freedom I had been longing for. As I arrived at the secluded location, surrounded by others who were also seeking a new beginning, an overwhelming sense of unity washed over me. I took a deep breath, feeling the burden of my fears begin to lift. The ceremony was intimate and filled with a palpable energy, a reflection of the awakening we were all seeking. As I was immersed in the water, I felt cleansed in body and soul. In that moment, I understood that I was breaking free from the hidden agenda that had shackled me to deception. I surfaced gasping for breath, every ounce of my being pulsating with the truth that was now woven into my identity. The weight of my past began to dissolve, replaced by a fierce determination to share my revelations and help others awaken to their truths. Yet, I also knew that the journey ahead would be fraught with challenges. Would my family accept this new version of me? Or would they cast me aside? These questions lingered like shadows at the edge of my consciousness. But nothing could extinguish the light that had been ignited within me. I emerged from the water, ready to face whatever lay ahead. Realizing the weight of my spiritual experience felt like a calling I could no longer ignore. The moment Jesus revealed the truths that had been hidden from me changed everything. It struck me to my core. I felt like I had been awakened from a long slumber, and suddenly, all that I had held dear began to unravel. As I sat in silence after that pivotal encounter, I understood that my life was no longer my own. I had been entrusted with a message, a revelation meant to pierce through the deception that enveloped so many lives. The burden of knowledge was heavy, but the urgency to share it pressed harder against my chest. I could see how easily people fell into the traps set by the elite, those who manipulate faith to maintain control. My heart ached for those still ensnared by the hidden agenda, those who blindly followed teachings that stifled their spirits. I wanted to shout the truth from rooftops, to break the bonds of fear and ignorance that kept so many in the shadows. Yet, I also felt the weight of potential repercussions hanging over me. The thought of facing rejection and estrangement from my family made me tremble. It was a risk I had to assess carefully, knowing that the path of awakening often comes with challenges and sacrifices. Every day, I resumed my prayers, but now they were filled with newfound purpose. I prayed not just for guidance, but for courage. The words poured from my heart, each utterance pregnant with the urgency to reach others with the message I had received. "Help me, Jesus," I whispered fervently. "Give me the strength to share what you've shown me. I want others to know the truth." With each session of heartfelt prayer, I felt more determined, more fortified to confront the fear that threatened to silence me. Far too many are caught in a web of deception. I sensed it was my duty to help others find their way out. One night, I gathered with a few trusted individuals, friends who had begun to question their own beliefs. The air was thick with anticipation as I shared my experience and the harsh truths that had been revealed to me. Their eyes reflected a mix of curiosity and skepticism, but I pressed on. I spoke of the manipulations I had uncovered, the spiritual war that raged around us, cloaked in religion and dogma. I explained that we mustn't let fear govern our choices. With each word I shared, the fire inside me grew. I was reclaiming my voice, and I could feel their spirits awakening to the possibility of something beyond their current reality. As I delved deeper into the conversation, the gravity of our shared experiences pulled us together. I could see in their eyes that they too sensed the urgency of awakening from the deceit that had long held them captive. The connection we forged that night felt electric, igniting a shared commitment among us to seek the truth together. However, shadows of doubt still lingered. I wrestled with the consequences that could unfold in my life, every moment filled with tension as I recognized the potential fallout from my revelations. But in that gathering, I also witnessed the power of community, the strength that comes from a united front against the darkness. I understood then that my awakening wasn't just personal. It was meant to ripple outward, awakening others and shining a light in a world that desperately needed it. The path ahead was fraught with uncertainty, but for the first time I felt a surge of hope. Symbolically shedding my old identity was a moment charged with significance as I prepared to leave my home. The act itself felt monumental, a declaration of liberation from the chains that had bound me for so long. I had spent years teaching in a community that revered tradition, yet the revelations bestowed upon me by Jesus during my near-death experience shattered the very foundations of my beliefs. They opened my eyes to the spiritual war lurking beneath the surface, one that was fueled by a hidden agenda designed to keep us all in line. Now, standing at the threshold of my former life, I faced the gravity of what it meant to embrace a new name, a new purpose. Leaving felt like stepping into an abyss, but deep inside, there was an ember of hope glowing brighter by the hour. The streets I once roamed with pride now seemed fraught with danger. I knew full well that my message would not be welcomed. I braced myself for the hostility that awaited, but the promise of spreading truth and hope felt like a divine mandate. Each step forward was both exhilarating and terrifying. I could feel the weight of my decision in my bones, a mix of anticipation and trepidation as I ventured into the unknown. As I walked away from everything I had ever known, my heart was heavy with the memories of my family and the love I held for them. I mourned the connections I was leaving behind, fully aware that my choice would cast a shadow over my relationships. Branded a heretic for following the path illuminated by Jesus, I confronted the potential isolation ahead. Yet I felt a profound responsibility to share the truth I had uncovered. The world was so steeped in deception. Countless people were unknowingly bound by the very beliefs I had once upheld. I felt an urgent calling to awaken them from their slumber, to show them that freedom was achievable through genuine faith, not through adherence to oppressive doctrines. In the face of adversity, I sought out fellow seekers, those who shared my yearning for truth and were not afraid to question the status quo. Each person I encountered became a thread in the fabric of my new community, a tapestry woven from shared dreams of liberation. I could see their struggles reflected in my own, and it fueled my resolve to create a space where awakening could flourish. Our conversations were filled with hushed tones and fervent prayers, each one echoing the heartbeat of a community rising against the dark forces that threatened to silence us. Still, the road was fraught with dangers. I began to receive threats from those who felt their power slipping away as I and my allies began to speak out. The elite who once operated behind the veil of religion would stop at nothing to quell the awakening that threatened their grip on society. I felt the tension in the air, palpable like a storm looming on the horizon. But with every challenge, my determination grew stronger. The revelations I had received were not merely for me. They were meant to be shared, to ignite hope in a world overshadowed by fear. I could not back down now, not when the truth held the power to shatter the chains of deception binding so many. It was time to rise, to claim my voice, and to lead others into the light of awakening, no matter what the cost. Years later, I found myself thriving within a vibrant Christian community, a stark contrast to the isolation I had experienced following my awakening. It was here that I truly began to understand the essence of what it meant to live in truth. The bonds I formed were forged in shared experiences of transformation, each of us having walked our own paths before stepping into the light of faith. We came together, hungry for the love and acceptance that genuine spiritual connection provides. Each encounter, each testimony shared, became a monument of hope. Together, we celebrated the power of faith to reshape our lives and guide us through the complexities of existence. Witnessing transformations in the lives of others filled me with an indescribable joy. It felt like being part of a greater narrative, one woven with threads of faith, healing, and awakening. I've seen people emerge from the shadows of despair, breaking free from the chains of addiction, guilt, and fear. Each story was a testament to the truth of Jesus' message, one of liberation and love that transcends arbitrary dogmas. I would watch as the light ignited within them, and the joy in their eyes mirrored the experience I had undergone. It affirmed for me the reality of the spiritual war that exists at the core of our society, where forces of deception work tirelessly to keep people trapped in their own prisons of theology. Despite this flourishing community, there remained a hollow ache within my heart, a yearning for reconciliation with my family and the society I had left behind. I often reflected on my loved ones, praying that one day they, too, would embrace the awakening that had so profoundly changed my life. The thought of their disapproval weighed heavily on me, yet I held hope that they might see through the deception that clouded their perceptions of faith. I sought to live my truth authentically, knowing that my journey could one day serve as a beacon for them. It was a delicate balance as I navigated between my past and the vibrant life I was now leading. For months I prayed fervently, asking Jesus to soften their hearts and open their eyes to the truth I had encountered. My faith became a source of strength, one that reiterated the conviction that while religion may imprison, true faith brings freedom and light. I felt compelled to share the hope I'd found with those still trapped in fear, to show them that liberation existed beyond the confines of manipulated beliefs. Each prayer was an offering, an earnest plea for understanding that transcended division. It became clear that my mission did not merely pertain to my own transformation. It was part of a larger tapestry, an invitation for others to step into their own awakening. As the days turned into months, the urgency of my calling continued to grow. I often found myself addressing gatherings, sharing my story of transformation and the revelations I had received. Speaking out became a way to counteract the hidden agendas that sought to maintain control over society. I felt the weight of the spiritual war manifesting in the discussions around me, each dialogue a testament to the struggle between truth and manipulation. My heart raced with anticipation every time I addressed a new audience, hoping to ignite the same light I had experienced in others. The thought of guiding someone else toward the awakening of their spirit filled me with enthusiasm, knowing that our combined voices could challenge the status quo and spread hope into the darkest corners of our world. I embraced that calling fervently, determined to carry the message forward, no matter the cost. Now that you've heard my story, I want to leave you with this. Have you ever felt the weight of an unseen battle waging within your spirit? A tug of war between the confines of what you've been taught and the deep, yearning pull towards a greater truth? In the shadows of our existence, there is an awakening happening, a shaking loose of old binds that kept us dormantly obedient. The experience I encountered with Jesus wasn't just a personal revelation. It was a divine invitation to understand that we are part of something much larger, a spiritual war that demands our attention and our action. As I emerged from the darkness of my coma, I realized that shedding the veneer of tradition was not merely for my liberation, but for the liberation of others who are still trapped in the grips of deception. Each one of us has a role to play in this unfolding narrative, a mission that goes beyond our individual lives. The world is cloaked in a veil designed to keep us in fear, but it is time to awaken to the truth that has the power to transform lives and challenge the status quo. So, I'm reaching out to you, dear viewers. Have you ever questioned the very foundations of what you believe? What epiphanies have stirred deep within you, urging you to look beyond? I invite you to share your reflections in the comments below. Your experiences matter, and together, we can create a resonant echo of truth that breaks down the walls of ignorance and fear. If this message has stirred something profound within your spirit, don't forget to subscribe to Truth from Beyond and turn on notifications. Each video we share is a continued journey toward understanding the depths of spirituality, and there are many more revelations waiting just around the corner, revelations that could change the course of your life and the lives of those around you. In our next episode, I'll delve into a testimony of an individual who faced the ultimate test of faith and emerged with a message of hope. Thank you for being here with me on this journey. I'm Ahmed, and remember, each step toward truth draws you closer to the light. Let's continue awakening together.